Out on time. So I would like to share a word with you about Erin Rafferty, one of our Alumni Service Award recipients. She cannot be with us this morning. Their daughter, Lucia, had a medical emergency this morning, and they are on their way to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And so I'm going to ask us just to take a moment of silence. If you would please pray for Erin and for Evan and for Lucia and the doctors who take care of her. I'll close us with a word of prayer, and then I will invite our other two awards to speak with us this morning. Let's have a moment of silence, please. God, your love for us is so great, we cannot imagine it. We are confident that you care for each and every one of us, and this morning we lift up before you a family who are dear to us. We ask you to pray for Erin, for Evan, and for their beautiful child, Lucia. That you help the doctors and all those who care for her to work for her healing, her comfort, and her wellness. And to know without a doubt that she is your beloved child. We pray these things in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you. I am going to keep my introductions short since we had the pleasure of meeting both these folks yesterday, so that I give them more time to talk to you, because you're tired of hearing from me, I'm sure. I'm going to invite first Teddy Reeves forward, followed by Richard Grounds this morning. Please welcome Teddy.
All right. There we go. How are you all this morning? Come on, how are you all this morning? I know Erin will be watching this. Please know that we are praying for you and praying with you in this time. I am really excited about talking with you all. I'm going to push through some things for the sake of time, but to talk about the work that I get to do and that I've been doing since leaving these doors, I guess 12 years ago. So it's been a joy nonetheless. Is it 12, man? I have to ask me. Oh, man. 12 years ago. So just a little about me. Originally from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, by way of Rochester, New York. I was born there. My family still have half family living in Rochester, half of them living in North Carolina and South Carolina, a little spread out. Did my BA at Hampton University, then came here to PTS. In between that undergrad time, I taught school for a little while, taught high school. So if you read the article on the PTS website, my call comes as I'm literally standing at a board teaching Death of a Salesman. And I hear this voice say, go to seminary. And I wanted to be a news anchor. So this was really messing up some things for me. And I won't go too much in detail, but I come to PTS in 2010, graduate 2013, and take a bunch of different journeys, working in the church, working in corporate, working, I was piecing some things together too, because that's also a story of folks leaving here, particularly people of color sometimes, when we don't have the same tracks to enter church work. And so it was finding and creating that space. And then worked here at the seminary for a little bit in Black Church Studies with Dr. Yolanda Pierce. And then she went down to the museum, and I joined her in the Center for the Study of African American Religious Life. And so I have been at the museum. It'll be 9 years in January. Whew. Look, as a good millennial, I can't believe I've been somewhere that long. So that's a little something sitting with me as well. But where I'll start is my work as a curator. My job at the museum, I am responsible for preserving, collecting, and interpreting the stories of African American religious life, looking at it very pluralistically. So we typically say anything African Americans have worshiped, called upon, conjured, spend time with, we collect those stories, we preserve that history. And particularly my area is visual art and media. So I look at religion through those two lenses. We have 3 curators of religion at the museum now. So we're actually the largest department at our museum, thanks to the Lilly Endowment, who has really been on a path these past few years to fund museums because they see museums as a new space and a third space where religion can be engaged in the public square, particularly as we are seeing the decline of our religious institutions, right? So where are these spaces where we can see religion practiced and engaged? And so we've had the great opportunity of being funded by Lilly in our second round. So we're at the point now, I think about $32 million they've invested in our museum for the study of religion. And so we're really grateful for that work. So one of the first things I want to talk to you about when I kind of highlight some of the work that I get to do is back in 2019 in Washington, D.C., there was a sculpture rediscovered in the Studio Acting Conservatory. This sculpture, this size really doesn't really give you the scale of it, but they are buying this building and really renovating this building to turn it into an acting conservatory. They buy it from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who, when they acquired the space, put up a wall over the sculpture, right? And we can talk about race, we can talk about all the different reasons why that may have been there, but luckily it was not torn down, right? So as they sell the building to the Studio Acting Conservatory, a group of the construction workers who are all Latinx tear down this wall and see this sculpture of the Last Supper. They immediately fall to their knees, right, because many of them are Catholic. And so they see this iconography on the wall, and it's taking up the entire back of the wall. And it begins this firestorm of articles and blog posts around this rediscovered sculpture. Who made the sculpture? Was the artist still alive? And so I see it on Facebook, and that's part of my job, right? As a curator, I have to collect artifacts. So I'm always scouring, I'm always looking what's out there and what's going on. And so I go under a Facebook message and reach out to the Studio Acting Conservatory director, and I'm like, hey, I'm interested in this sculpture. Where is it going? Who's going to take it? So if you look off to the right, this is what it looked like when the New Home Baptist Church, which was an African-American congregation in D.C., commissioned the piece of art to be in the pulpit area. So they commissioned artist Akili Ron Anderson, who's a professor at Howard University, still in his 80s. He's teaching visual art at Howard. And so if you've been in DC, you may have seen a lot of his work in train stations. He does stained glass and other works. And so Akili had forgotten about the work. He thought it was destroyed because he grew up in the neighborhood with New Home Baptist Church. And when the church moved, he thought the sculpture either moved with them or it was torn down when it changed hands. And so he is, I think at the time he does the sculpture, he's in his 30s or 40s. And so he comes back to this work years later, having forgotten some things about it, having not seen it in some time. And it really ignited this conversation again about public preservation, right? What do we do with things as an institution? So you can see on the left, this is when our crew goes out from the museum. My dear colleague, Katrina, actually, every time I see this image, it just does something to me. She passed away in COVID. And we all went out to the space to check out the sculpture. So you're seeing what it looked like 2 days after it's discovered, and then you're looking at what it looks like in the church space. So what we do is we begin the work of conservation. I want to collect the sculpture to bring to the museum. So we have to go to the architect of the museum, we have to go to engineers. What we end up finding is that it'll take about $1.5 million to move this thing from one side of DC to the other side of DC. We have to close down roads, we have to take the wall of the building and rebuild them a wall because it's affixed to the back wall. We're committed at this point, right? We're committed. And the engineers and the architects come back and say, we don't have a structure within the building that could sustain the weight of the sculpture, right? Both on a built wall for a temporary exhibition, there's no structure we could build strong enough. And then also the walls of our museum could not hold, it would crumble. And so it puts us in this peculiar space. But it also allows us to do some innovative work. So if you look, we had the sculpture conserved in space. This is before what it looked like after it's discovered. This is what it looks like after we bring in a conservation team to do some of the work. But when I talk about digital innovation, what we're able to do is 3D image scan the sculpture, right? And we acquire the sculpture as a digital artifact of the museum and not a physical. So it becomes our first time accessioning something that we don't physically own at our museum, but that lives in the public square that individuals can engage with. So we enter into an agreement with them that it has to remain open to the public. We do the conservation work. We bring in a team to 3D image scan. What I encourage you to do is scan this QR code. When you scan the QR code, there's one little blank wall over here. Through your mobile device, using AR technology, you can project the sculpture on a wall in your office, in your home, through your mobile device. And this, again, creates an opportunity for access, right, when we think about artifacts keeping things in location with community. But it also creates opportunities for us to talk about religion using technology. And that is where I enter in scholarship, is how does technology impact the practice of religion? How does religion impact the practice of technology? And so thinking about this innovation and the work that we get to do, and we're talking about new generations and how we engage people with the practice of religion, this allows us to use technology, particularly with younger audiences and older audiences, to play with artifacts, right? People want to touch things. We're the Smithsonian, so we often don't allow you to touch things. But this allows you to touch something and play with something in your own space. So again, this is, you could scan it and always pull it back up. But this is kind of the rendering, and if you see, you can use that over there. But really thinking about how do we take Christ into the home, right, in a very practical way, right? How do we talk about representation and who gets to see themselves in the image of God? Akili, one thing important, Akili used members in New Home Baptist Church as the reference for the faces in the sculpture. So women get to see themselves at the table. Men get to see them, children get to see themselves at the table. If you notice, Judas is the only one touching the table beyond Christ. He will not tell you who Judas is based on what the congregation, because we all got some Judases in congregation. But that there is something about, particularly coming out of the Afro-Cobra movement of the 70s, right? This is the Black Power movement. So we're in the 80s, we're coming right out of this. It's important for people of color, particularly black folk, to see themselves represented, right? And to imagine ourselves as divine. So I also curated a digital exhibition along with this, so you can scan that QR code and go check that out a little later. It's called Jesus' Hair Like Wool, Black Messianic Representation in Art, History, and Media. And it's an online digital exhibition that allows you to look at messianic figures. So Martin Luther King is a messianic figure. Noble Drew Ali is a messianic figure. Elijah Muhammad is a messianic figure in the community. Also, you can go as far as say Barack Obama was a messianic figure in black community, right? That these individuals become examples for this salvificness, right, in the lived everyday experience. And so you get to check that out. You'll learn some more about Akili. You can check out an oral history of Akili talking about the work. And for him, we did an opening at the Studio Acting Conservatory, and he just cried because he had not, to think that this had been destroyed and this is work you did in your younger years, to now come full circle and your students that you get to teach, get to experience something that you had thought was lost. that became a moment of celebration for him, and also to receive your flowers on this side for the work that you've done for Black art, and also thinking about the work you've done for culture. And so he's an amazing artist. If you can get to him, I would say definitely get to DC. He has a humongous studio. He's still making work and still very much so rooted in the culture and in the work of art. So I'll move on. So in 2018, I was wrestling with some questions. As I told you, I came out of working in the church. I was an executive minister of a church in Jamaica, Queens. And so I was coming out of some questions for myself while I was still in the church of where were the young people, right? At that time, I think I was like early 30s. And I'm like, or late 20s, one of the two. It's all going by now. It's all moving. Oh, look. I'm about to walk over that threshold. So I'm like, here we go. That I had these questions around where were the people that looked like me, that had the same cultural experiences, that had the same upbringing, had the same issues of 9/11, recessions, student loan debt, all of these things that plagued my specific generation, right? That I didn't see us. And this is a church that had a 300-member youth ministry in the 90s, right? And I would see many of these youth still come to the church, but they would go upstairs because that's where the youth church was. And so there was no connection with them coming downstairs to worship versus them going upstairs. And our IYM, y'all doing some amazing work on youth ministry and what that has meant for us to separate churches over time, right, and the communities. And so I did a survey. Right, and I was like, well, why aren't you coming? We're in Queens. Is it because it's a two-fare zone? Is it because, we're cutting into brunch time? What is it that is causing you all to not come to church? And we got a bunch of different answers, but it helped me to begin to imagine with that community what it could be to re-engage millennials, right? Particularly at that time, it was millennials. And so fast forward, I joined the museum a couple months later, and it gives me an opportunity to start imagining, is this a Black church problem, or is this a Black faith problem, right? Because we do work very pluralistically at the museum. And so Pew, we're all familiar with the Pew Research Center, who was leading and leads really much of the data on religion in America. You are fine. Religion in America. I reached out to the folks at Pew and said, hey, how can we make your quantitative data qualitative, right? They were in this interesting space around pushing their data beyond graphs and articles. And so it became a perfect marriage of this idea I have around doing a conversation series and a film to really study Black millennials in faith. And this predates their 2021 survey on the Black church and on Black faith. And so we joined together and we launched in 2018 a conversation series looking at Black millennials in faith. And it pilots in Los Angeles. We subsequently do 7 cities. We partner with Pharrell Williams, that is Something in the Water Music Festival, because realizing that music festivals, Coachella, right, Something in the Water, all of these things are some of the new spiritual spaces that millennials, not just Black millennials, but millennials in general are seeking for spiritual experience outside of our religious institutions, right? And so from 2018 to, I guess, last year when we finished the tour, we have been studying Black millennials at the museum, really trying to understand them. We would bring 14 in each city, sometimes intergenerational conversations with boomers and Gen Xers and Gen Z to talk about the shift in faith. African Americans are the most religious demographic in this country. Black women are the most religious demographic in this country. And if faith is declining amongst the most religious group, that's a phenomenon for us to begin to look at as a country, right? And so really trying to figure out what's going on. So through our project, we've won over 50 awards for the innovation of digital. This is before the pandemic, right? So we are going digital and live, doing programming across the country because we realize everyone cannot come to Washington, D.C. So how do you take the museum to the people? And then also thinking about the work around engagement with younger audiences with the museum. So I'm going to cut this clip, but I just want you to look a little bit.
Real problem with pastors pandering to women's insecurities, correct? To try to use that as a way to get praise. I just have a real issue with that. I don't like that it's preached that a man is your ultimate reward. Do this and you're gonna get a man.
I was taught that sex is a negative thing. Sex is bad. That's what bad girls do. I remember Candace was talking about what happened to her mother in church. That they would do that in my church. If you were a pregnant teen, you had to go up in front of the church and apologize. And I never forgot the first time I saw that, and I felt hurt for her. I actually had to do that later, but not because I was pregnant, but because my father beat me and they made me apologize to my dad in front of the church. And but that idea of shaming people for doing something that's natural, for something that's healthy, something that you should be able to do, is part of the reason why I think some people also leave that space. Because you learn, I remember the first time I had sex, I had a panic attack. Because I felt so guilty because I wasn't married. I wasn't even a Christian anymore. And it still affected me so deeply to the point where after that I didn't have sex again for another 5 years. And so when we talk about sexuality and spirituality, some spiritual belief systems are designed to oppress sexuality, and usually women's sexuality. Because I remember one time it was a meeting we had in Daughters of Zion, one of the many things we had to do at church. You know what I'm talking about, Candace. One of the many things we had to do, but I remember in that meeting, and I asked, how come the girl has to apologize and not the boy? Or why is it bad for the girl to have sex? And there isn't much conversation around boys. And the first lady in our Daughters of Zion meeting said because the girls have to bring the baby home. I never forgot that statement because it still didn't make any sense. but that's an example of how sexuality was taught to the point where when I became sexually active, it took me years to really understand that this is healthy. I'm not a bad person. There's nothing wrong with me. This is totally okay.
For me, in my particular experience, it wasn't the best. I knew I was gay. I identify as queer now, but at the time I knew I was gay since like 4 years old. And my family also knew. And it was one of those situations where, they tried to do the whole pray the gay away thing. And made a whole big deal about it, and they were very clear that God, their understanding of God, said that I wasn't supposed to be gay, that it was a sin, that I was going to hell, all of those things. And so they tried to do what they could to steer me in the right direction. And I guess for the most part, I kind of went along with it. It was a tactic, a form of survival, and navigating those particular space. I think they very much loved me and still love me, but it was just something that was in contention with what their beliefs were.
I'm going to stop there. It's a lot more, but that the culmination of the project was a 2-hour documentary film under the same title called God Talk, where we looked more deeply at 7 Black millennials, Buddhist, Christian, atheist, E5 practitioner, Muslim, and how all of them are engaging with faith in the 21st century. So when you hear Siobhan, who talks about her father beating her, she's an atheist. So we follow Siobhan deeper in her story about her father and getting more detail. We follow Travell, the last individual that you see, who now, when we started talking to Travell, identified as queer, now identifies as trans. Right, and so we were tracking that journey with Travell, and we track it throughout the film. And so it follows that growing up in the Baptist church, going to Morehouse College, which is an all-boys school, and the experience of being there and navigating that as well. To now being, Travell was the film journalist, film reporter for the LA Times, now works for Out Magazine, and so tracking those different experiences. It also really looks at a young man who was a pastor, resigned from being a pastor to be a Lyft driver, because of the oppressiveness of the Black church, right? And so now is a high school teacher in Brooklyn. And so looking at all of these different stories of those who have stayed in the church, those who have walked away from the church, those who are still nuancing faith in general, it really chronicles that whole experience. So it'll be out on YouTube September of this year on the museum's page, so you'll see ads and you can follow along, reach out to me. We did a 55-city tour last year with the film, hit 12 film festivals, international locations to really take the film to people and to start some interesting conversations around faith. I'm gonna move along. I have 3 more minutes.
Millennials are calling for this theological reformation.
My belief in God leads to action and change in the world.
That's what Black spirituality does.
It fashions these quilts that warm people. It fashions this music that speaks is not a white church and black thing.
Islam in America has always been a black religion. That if we don't figure out this white supremacy thing, none of us are going to get out of line.
We wouldn't be free from slavery in black church. If we did in a real sense construct our own conception of God, because guess what? They gave us one version of God. We had enough creative imagination to say, like, nah, y'all version of God.
The whole idea of religion is how could we get the body, mind, spirit, and soul working all well with each other. That's the whole idea of God.
Every morning that I wake up and black folks are still surviving in a country that despises them, that's a moment of inspiration.
So that was the trailer to the film. It features about 20 different faith traditions in the film. Experts from all over. You see Dr. Penn, Pastor Moss, Otis Moss III, and many others are featured throughout the film to talk about and contextualize this. And then finally, Art Like Me. I am the founding director and chief curator of Art Like Me, which is a nonprofit that focuses on breaking systemic issues related to black and brown men and boys using art and culture as the vehicle. And that comes out of a passion project of the work that I was doing at the museum of, I don't see a lot of black boys in art. Right? I don't see a lot of black boys as curators, or I don't see myself often. At the museum, we have 3 curators that are black men. And so really thinking about how do we begin to change. Black men have the highest mortality rate in this country, the highest incarceration rate, the highest illiteracy rate, the shortest life expectancy. All of these things continue to put us at the top of, as Congress is studying black men right now, calling it an endemic. That we are facing in this country. And so how do we begin to chip away at some of those things is, for me, talking about emotional intelligence and using creativity and expression as a vehicle. So one of our big projects that we do is our visual representation project that really focuses on giving visual art prints to black and brown boys. And I won't play the next video for time, but that the goal is to give them art prints by established artists. They run, some of those prints are valued at $750 to $1,500, so we're giving them investment pieces, right? They can't sell them for 10 years, so they're walking out of high school, or they're graduating high school with an asset. So when we talk about wealth building and we talk about economic mobility, it's not just about the beauty of the art. We teach them how to take care of it, it's already framed, but it's also about investment and upward mobility for this demographic. And so that's some of the work we do. We also do exhibitions, but for the sake of time, stay connected with me. You can scan my QR code. I would love to stay connected. Oh, and if you didn't get it, I'll see you at the end.
Thank you, Teddy. We're going to want more from all these folks, but we have to get to worship. So I am going to invite Richard Grounds to come forward now, please, and they're going to lift this for you, and we're good to go. Thank you.
Sanleki asota antadik neti sadly la okwede safile hotoe onkati tedik ala wegwaha dotash ale tahe okonfete onkaju peshe sa akem. So I'm greeting you in our Yuchi language. I am speaking a bit quickly as a press of just trying to pack in a little bit of a hint of things that we could continue the discussions around. but much appreciation for being able to be here and for all of your presence, and particularly Teddy's work and remarks. He dropped a little bit of a small bomb last night, a word bomb, talking about this issue of, what is it? Oh, amnesia, I think it is. I may not be able to track as closely around the amnesia thing as I would like, but I wanted to kind of pick up on that a little bit and just talk about it. Actually, it took me back. I'm just going to take a few minutes. As you know, for those of you who either have earned PhDs or have talked to someone with a PhD and you start asking about their work, it gets to be a really long conversation. So we don't have time for all that conversation, but it did remind me and bring me back to my time here in Princeton, my days here at Princeton Theological Seminary, and the very strange discovery when I went across the street to Firestone Library and went to check out the reference section and thought, well, I'll see what they're saying about Native American folk. We have this kind of odd relationship with academia and with the intellectual records regarding our nations, our realities, our challenges, our victories. And I pulled this book off the shelf. This was, I was here, I guess, in the mid 80s, late 80s. So this was fairly current. There was a book from 1979, Concise Dictionary of Native American Tribes by Barbara Leach. I found a section, article entry on the Yuchi Nation. And the very first thing it says is, Yuchi, an extinct hunting and agricultural tribe. This is literally the first thing that I'm reading in the article. It's repeated again at the end of the article as if it might have somehow been a mistaken misrepresentation. So I'm in this very strange place of just literally sitting in one of the finest libraries in the world, and I'm reading in the reference section that, apparently I don't exist. I'm extinct. It's a very strange thing. And we're just going to move on. I'm just throwing some of these things out there. I'm going to get a few of these pieces into the discussion. But at any rate, shortly after that, I was actually at a book sale here in Princeton, just like a yard sale in someone's yard here. And they had a bunch of books. This is Princeton, right? And they were on the table there. And there was Lossing's encyclopedia of the history of the United States from 100 years before, from the 1880s. I opened this book up. Hey, there's a chapter on Yuchi people, and it says, again, this is 100 years before, and it says, this has this strange comment that the Yuchi nation is extinct and their language is almost forgotten. So I don't know how you're both extinct and your language is almost forgotten. This is a very kind of oxymoronic kind of comment. I don't know how to really process it. At any rate, that is to say, this was just the beginning. And I began to find all these references from encyclopedias about Native American costume, I think in 1996, from Paterick, Carl Waldman's encyclopedia on Native American tribes from 1988 talks about Yuchis as extinct. And it was just, it was quite amazing to kind of begin tracking this. And then I began tracking it even earlier into the 1840s and 30s, and references even in the 1820s that we were extinct. I don't have time to, kind of unpack the madness of all of that, but this is part of the, I could say, colonial fever, part of the justification process for the theft and genocide of indigenous peoples in this land. A part of the explanation is, of course, that, well, maybe they've just disappeared. You know, they're not really around. We don't have to deal with them if they would disappear, so let's maybe declare them so. And this has gone on for generations, centuries now, that we've crossed into multiple centuries. Anyway, let me just kind of try to bring the point home and ask this august gathering of everyone in here may or may not have advanced degrees, but I'm sure you're all a pretty smart, well-informed, well-intended, good-hearted folk. But let me ask, just to kind of try to make this point in a few minutes here, if I could ask literally for an actual show of hands. I think if you're from the United States, some of you may not know all of the lay of the land, but if you are from the United States, you know where the state of Missouri is. I see hands, virtually 100%. How many of you know where the Missouri people are, the Missouri nation today? I see no hands. There's a state called Iowa. Does everyone know where the state of Iowa is? How many of you know where the Iowa nation is today? None of you. We have the state of Kansas. Anyone know where the Kansas people are today? We have a state called Texas, Tejas. Anyone know where the Tejas people are today? I don't think there are any Tejas people left today after the series of genocides by the series of the six flags, the six colonial flags that flew over their land. But the Missouri nation, the Iowa nation, the Kansas people they've all been pushed into my home state. Well, that is to say, where we are now, the state of Oklahoma, where I was born and grew up. Let me ask you another question. Out of this collection of brilliant, well-educated, well-intended minds collected together, how many of you have ever even thought of the question, why is this state called Iowa, and where are the Iowa people? Has anyone actually wondered where the Iowa people are? I see heads nodding, mostly no. I have a few hands going up. The Missouri people, this is the magic of the colonial alchemy, to erase entire indigenous nations right before our eyes, appearing to honor them. We've named the state after them. The people themselves have been genocided, packed up of any survivors, and henceforth removed. I mean, it's so powerful that if we were to look at it, look at the map. I'm going to do a quick scribble here, maybe. I may lose my scale at some point. So, thank you. So this is the lower 48. Out of the 50 states, if you think about it, if you start doing the math, over half the states are named after indigenous peoples. Literally. Or native-derived names, or after indigenous peoples, which is to say, where are the indigenous peoples themselves? What is their story? What is the status and plight of their language, of their culture, of their traditions, of their songs? Anyway, in a few moments, I won't go into all the details of the story, but just to say briefly, if you looked at the state names, scattered over half the names derived from indigenous languages or indigenous peoples, you would think that there was a great honoring. Isn't it? Wouldn't that, I assume that would be the impression. Let me point you to how this magic works. And this is why I call it the United States of Amnesia, USA, is because we have completely erased the realities of the indigenous nations from this land. And I'm going to put, I'm going to try to put, maybe this was the copper coin that was, I don't know how well I'm showing up there. This was a coin that was first minted in 1859 for the next 50 years. And you may remember this coin. This is the so-called Indian head penny, which was being minted for 50 years. This was the coin of the realm. And this figure here on the headband are the letters Liberty. I'm sorry to drag you all through this. This actually was part of my dissertation. These were pieces of the dissertation work. The strange thing is, this is supposed to be a female figure wearing a male headdress. It's all very, colonial confusion here. But in 1859, the image of indigenous peoples, or some colonial version thereof, is being held up as the very model, the very image of American liberty. We are the mascot for the colonial project. The colonial project defends itself, defends its right to the land by claiming the identity of the true inheritors of the land. That's the trick. That's the point of the process, is to claim that indigenous identity. And we won't have time to go into it, but I think that's why we're still playing these games with sporting events all over the country with so-called Indian mascots, right? So we can pretend to be Indians. We can put on war paint and fake feathers and make a mockery of all the sacred things, whether it's drums or spears or the paint itself. All of that is a way of denigrating indigenous practices, ceremonial beliefs. It's a way of saying, we've arrived. We can claim everything about them. We not only claim their names on the states, we not only have claimed their lands through a legal/illegal process, but we claim their very identity now through a mascot process, so that we can make sure the next generation knows that they are the inheritors of what would otherwise be the indigenous claims to this land. Well, I don't have very long to talk about these things, but just to say, to remind us of the context, in 1859, we had already seen the genocidal wars. If you're from this area, I don't know where everyone's from, we had 1637, the massacre against the Pequot. We've got 1676, the War of Annihilation against the Narragansett. et cetera, et cetera. We have in the 1830s the genocidal removal of the great nations of the Muskogee, Chelagi, the Cherokee, the Chickasaws, the Choctaws, the Seminoles, the Yuchi Nation, people forced out, losing over half of their population through that brutal process. We won't go into all of those stories. Our people were here in the south, what's now referred to as the southeastern part of the states, pushed out to Oklahoma. If I can keep my map going here halfway. We're going to say that's Oklahoma, and then somehow Texas comes in here. Texas is here like that. Sadle Kiasota. And then we've got Kansas, we mentioned, Iowa, Missouri, et cetera, et cetera. In 1859, just to make the point, while the state itself was co-opting indigenous faux images for the service of the state, indigenous peoples literally controlled this entire, well, my green isn't working, this entire region about, well, my scale is a little bit off, everything shifted, about over 50%, somewhere around 50% of the current continental United States was still in indigenous hands, which meant in 1859, the claim that Native Americans represented, the liberty that the American nation state was claiming for its citizens, was soon to be denied the actual indigenous nations living all throughout this land. And of course, we have the genocidal processes that continued with the massacre on the Marias, ending with Wounded Knee, 1890, as kind of the most notorious massacre by U.S. military in the late 19th century. The point of all this being that somehow we have cloaked all of this, and this is why I refer to this as the USA, as the United States of amnesia. And just to reconnect again, our indigenous communities, our people who have been excluded, we have our own histories, we have our own interconnections. In 1919, some of you may be aware of the Tulsa race massacre that was perpetrated, and they have a powerful presentation at the museum where Teddy is doing important leading work there. And I must tell you, that story connects literally directly with our Yuchi community. Our last living male speaker of the Yuchi language, Ase Henry Washburn, was born and grew up south of Tulsa in a town called Bristow. He would have been born a little bit after that massacre in 1919, but he was a World War II veteran in the Navy, and he was a native speaker of his language. Amazingly, he grew up hearing only his mother speak the language, and he spoke the women's way. He didn't know it until he got out into the larger community later. And so he became a special gift because he could speak the men's way and the women's way and carried that knowledge to our children. He was like a grandfather figure for my children coming up when I was taking them out of the public school so we could do homeschooling and work with our elders and work on our language and connect in these ways. But he grew up on a farm in a rural area where one of the targeted black leaders of the community had been attacked during that time, during that race massacre, and they fired a shotgun, blinded him, and he stayed on that farm out in this rural community off the grid, where there was no easy way to track him down. Anyway, my only point is, since I'm out of time now, my only point is that it's all about working together to overcome these past grievances. This erasure of indigenous peoples is of our issues is a real thing. We seem to be at a point politically where there's active pressure to do a great deal of erasure and efforts to remove from memory. So we need to work together to remember our communities, to bring our communities back together. And I am very proud. I think about our opportunity to come and speak with you all. And one of our elders, Mos Kawi, our founding elder for the Yuchi Language Project in our community, when I told him and other elders about this history of the claims of our extinction as Yuchi people, which the elders didn't know. They were still conducting the ceremonies, still speaking their language. They didn't know they didn't exist. And so Mos Kawi, after that, every time he would pray, the first thing he would say, Yuchi Hanne no, son Kene no. We Yuchi people, we're still here. And that became his opening words to the Creator. It seemed like he was saying, I'm giving back to you the gift you gave to us. I'm speaking to you in our language. We're still here. Son Kene no. And he was an important gift to us to carry that tradition forward. And he had a business card. I know this all seems disconnected, but I'll sign off with this. He had a little business card in his later years, which just said, Mos Kawi, Yuchi. He was in the business of Yuchi. He was in the business of sharing his language, his knowledge of the history, the medicines, the traditions. And I don't have his gravitas to produce such a card, but I am a bit jealous of it still. And I will tell you, though, that my calling card, whatever academic degrees I may have, whatever wonderful support I may have received from this institution, from professor here, Charlie Ryerson, in the History of Religions program back in the day, and Chuck Long, who came in as a visiting professor to help with my dissertation work. But my main credit is my kids speak Yuchi language. My grandmother was punished in boarding school for speaking, but she only went to school later, so she never really lost her language. But we didn't. They brainwashed her. They couldn't wash it out of her mouth, but they did wash it, in some sense, brainwash her. And she didn't speak the language to my father and the other kids in the home. And so we have been in the process of reclaiming it. And my kids speak as second language learners. I'm a second language learner of Yuchi. And now my grandkids, my 4 grandkids, are the first Yuchi speaking kids in 4 generations as their first language, as their mother language. And So anyway, but that, if you need my resume, that's all I need to put on there. But
Teddy, we are grateful for the work that you both are doing in helping us remember and learn and keeping alive stories of people that should be remembered. And we're grateful for that work. Thank you. If you want to know more from and about both Richard and Teddy's work, you can email me at the alumni email address, and I'm sure they'll help me get resources and information through our office to you so that you can learn more about that. I'm going to excuse us for worship, but I'm going to do something here because I didn't reconnect back with Martin. And I don't know if there's an opportunity to introduce our preacher to you during the context of worship, because I'm not leading in worship. I don't worry about them because they're so good at what they do. But I want an opportunity to tell you a little bit about Andrew Wilkes, who agreed to come down from Brooklyn and preach for us today. Andrew is a 2015 grad with his Master's of Divinity here at Princeton Seminary. He and his spouse Gabby are pastors at the Double Love Experience Church in Brooklyn. And he also, before coming to seminary and becoming a pastor, he was the executive director of the Drum Major Institute, a social change organization founded by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So he's got this fascinating background. And so I think we will all be delighted to hear him this morning. I encourage you to go up and speak with him following worship. And if I'm wrong and there is another introduction, that's great. We'll hear more about Andrew. All right? Thank you so much. I think this is the last chance I get to say thank you for coming. So we will get to worship together, and then we will get to fellowship and eat together. And of course, we are not outside. We are inside Mackay for lunch. Thank you.